Okay, now ways to cope and resources. So how do you handle this? If you have a student like this and you know they're down here at culture shock, how do you cope? First, ask them questions. Don't assume that they're just being stubborn or they're just being a bad kid. Ask questions. What's going on? Why aren't you doing your homework all of a sudden? You've been doing your homework for 10 weeks of the semester and all of a sudden you're not turning anything in. You're not engaging with things in class. You're not doing your assignments. What's going on? Why are you doing this? What are you going through? Be patient and give them the benefit of the doubt. Don't jump to conclusions about them. If you kind of figure out, you start thinking, okay, it's been 2, 3, 4 months. They're all of a sudden tired, grouchy, not doing their work. You think, this might be culture shock. It's good to share some personal stories. If you have had experiences of culture shock when you've traveled to other countries, share those with your international student who's experiencing it. This develops empathy between you and rapport, which will really help as you seek to be their friend and to kind of coach them through this. Tell them to sleep at home, not in class. Suggest ways to get them out having fun, especially with Americans. So to combat the withdrawal instinct, get them out there hanging out with American friends. One of the common complaints among our current international students about Cascade is that they need more opportunities to make American friends. They feel like there's a divide between Americans and internationals, and it's very difficult for the internationals sometimes to actually bridge that divide and make friends with local Americans. So if there's any way that you can help foster that and facilitate that, especially for internationals who you can tell are going through culture shock, then that really would get things going. Suggest that they call home. Okay, you don't want them to do this every single day. And if you know of any students who are doing this every day, please discourage that. But if a student is homesick, calling home is not necessarily a bad thing. It's good to check in with family and friends, and that can be very therapeutic. Doing it every single day, I think, can actually hinder their adjustment to the local culture because then they're not really living here and really seizing the fullness of their experience in this culture. Contact their host parents if you think they're going through culture shock. The host parents actually spend a lot more time with them every day than you do, and so they can really pay attention and help their host student to work through this and come out the other side. And also contact the international team and talk to them about the student, get the student to talk to one of them and to coach and counsel them, because they deal with this day in and day out, and that's what they're here for, and that's what they love to do. Above all, just remember that this is temporary. Culture shock is, you don't get stuck here, hopefully. Most people don't get stuck here. If you help them, you can help them get to the recovery phase. And if they crash again, you can help them get even further up to the comfort phase. Okay, the next slide. Now, culture shock is not just for our international students. It's not just something that affects them. It would affect anyone who goes into another culture. And so it applies to our I-term students. So if you're taking a group on an I-term to a different culture, different country, then certainly culture shock is something that you have to look for. Also, if you're taking a group to a different culture within America, it might be in Las Vegas or LA, or even here in Puyallup, dealing with homeless people or the urban poor. It is a very different culture from generally middle class, suburban American, mostly white culture. So you should take culture shock into account if you're taking kids on I-term into a different culture, whether it's international or not. So the first assignment to do with I-term is assignment 3B. And in this assignment, I want you to consider your I-term trip. I want you to either think about preferably the one that's coming up, if it has anything to do with dealing with a different culture, whether it be in a different country or homeless people, urban poor, handicapped culture can be, if you're dealing with a group of handicapped people, that can be an entirely different culture. If you're dealing with senior citizens, that could be an entirely different culture, in a sense, subculture. Either think about the group, the I-term trip you will take this coming I-term, or think about I-term in the past, if you've had any I-term groups that have dealt with any other culture that's been some sort of a cultural jump for your students. And I want you to think about what might trigger culture shock in your I-term students during that I-term trip. Try to think of 3 specific things, and then think about how you will prepare your students for those challenges. When you do some sort of specific activity, some sort of role play, where you help students predict that something like this might happen, and you challenge them, how will you deal with this? Maybe role play with a student, one student playing a Cascade student and one student playing a homeless person, and the homeless person asks the Cascade student for money. Role play that and get the kids to decide, okay, how are we going to handle that when the homeless guy asks us for money? What should our response be? What should we say to him? What should we do? So set things up so you're challenging your I-term students to think about it ahead of time. Now, I want you to think of 3 activities that address the 3 specific triggers of culture shock.